I'm Lou Brutus, more from Rockfest 2019 in Cadott, Wisconsin. Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves joins me now. Good to see you, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
What is your real first name?
Marlon. And it's not a secret. Like, it's not like I'm trying to hide it. But it's a lot of people go, Marlon, like the fish. I'm like, no, with an O, Marlon Brando.
Marlon, yeah.
He's won Oscars, right? Look him up.
How did you get Doc? Because Doc is one of the cool nicknames of all time.
It was a name. Well, here's the thing. I've always been Doc since I've kind of come into consciousness. And apparently the story I get, because I wasn't there for it, was that my brother kept calling me Doc when I came home from the hospital, and it just kind of stuck. So I've never not known myself as Doc.
Did when you were a kid, did you talk like this? Hello, Mrs. Torrance.
No. All right. I was. You
know the reference?
Yeah, it's The Shining.
Okay, good. All right, sorry.
No, there's a lot of Docs. We got Doc from Bad Brains. We had Doc, the old drummer from Vader, who actually passed away.
Yeah.
There's a handful of Docs. And actually, there's a tough story about that. When I was in high school, I went to this small private school, and everyone knew me as Doc. And then we got this teacher, and his last name was Brown, and they all started calling him Doc Brown, like after Back to the Future. And so from then on, if anyone said Doc, they weren't talking about me, and it sucked. And he had coffee breath, so he didn't really deserve that. He took my name, they just gave it away. It was pretty cold.
Okie doke. So you guys you've sort of been in this weird nether world. You have incredible new music, but there's not really anything you can do about it right now. Kind of tell me and everybody where you're at with everything.
Well, we started working on new songs in between tours, going back to before the new year, and we really knew with the momentum of the band, we really wanted to strike while the iron was hot and have something ready so that we could basically put albums out back-to-back years. And we worked very quickly, and the material is great. It's kind of like you don't really know what it's going to be, but I think all the time on the road touring with 3 Days Grace and Shinedown and Five Finger, and playing these really big venues and big festivals, it kind of informs you about what songs you're already playing connect, touring with other bands and seeing, these bands with these long catalogs of what really works in these environments. And it was really kind of aspirational, okay, we want to be a band like this. When I say that, I don't mean that sounds like this, but has a 15-year, 20-year career at a success at a certain level. And it's hey, this is what you need to kind of be competitive. And it's really just, you go see a Shinedown show or a Pop Roach show, and it's it's just hits top to bottom. And so that says, okay, this is where the band needs to get to in terms of the kind of band we want to be, but without losing our identity. And the truth is we're a lot heavier than a lot of these bands. So it's we don't want to lose that edge that, kind of, we're a band that kind of leans into the musicianship as well, and we don't want to, dumb it down too much that it loses some of that.
Oversimplify.
Well, just that's your personality. That's what's
what makes you
exactly
as a band.
Exactly. We'll say there's a Bad Wolvesy type riff, or it has to have a certain balance, or I think John calls riffs you can throw weights around to. There's something, something a little bit to that. But yeah, the new material is great. Basically, we were done. We thought we were done, and our label and management and Zoltan, who manages the band, they always it's a little nip tuck. Hey, go back, do this. Hey, let's try this.
This can be better.
Yeah, listen, man, and I think everyone knows, man. There's a lot riding on this, and these things are forever. You only get one chance really to do it right, and everything. And I'm, it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's kind of cool that people care so much about what this band is and sees the potential.
I'm really curious, as you were writing and going back and forth on the road, was there anything that you approached the songwriting with based upon how the songs were going to project to the bigger places that you were going into?
Well, I think the interesting thing about this time around, that even if a song was really heavy, there was always a sense that every song we're trying to make a hit. And by that, I don't mean necessarily it's going to be a single, but you want every riff to be iconic. You want every lyric to be something. I remember, talking about Metallica and Megadeth, I didn't have to pick up the lyric sheet. I knew the words because of how well they were written, how well they were enunciated, how all this stuff was iconic, and that was the work that was done to say, hey, we want to write something that connects, because you're doing a big festival. If the music doesn't have a certain connectivity and clarity to it, it's not going to reach the person who's a
Way in the back,
thousand yards back. And that's what you see. Like, I remember we did a festival and it was like Smashing Pumpkins was playing. And I was way in the back, and you're like, these are iconic songs, and that's really the stuff we grew up on. So it's about kind of not overloading material with kind of information. It's like you can almost like equate it to like a film, like an action scene where there's too much going on, there's too many cuts, you can't see what's going on. It just looks like white noise. And I think music can kind of be that. And there's only a handful of bands that can do that and make it work. But it's about taking what we do and kind of compressing into something that is really going to connect with people.
Is it really a case sometimes of knowing when the song is done? Because sometimes, and certainly there's plenty of examples in histories of songs and albums that people just kept fucking with and kept tinkering with, and it can never end.
Well, I have a real problem. Like, there's definitely inner stuff, like, you guys will never know. Maybe it'll come out in like a documentary or something at some point, where I do think in our process where I will think something's done, and then I come back and then someone has changed something, and I want to put my fist through a wall because I do think there's
That's the spirit.
Well, no, and I think but sometimes that'll happen and it'll make the song. But I'm very much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it guy. And sometimes kind of, and when you certain analogies, like if you have a sculpture, right? Mm-hmm. And a sculpture, it might be done, but if you do one more thing, you can't put it's already done. You can't reapply something that you already taken away sometimes. So, and songs aren't, in the digital age, it's not totally like that. But, I do think there is this element, because now we have this digital technology and we can, edit things on the fly and constantly go back and redo things. I think that does take a little bit of the magic out, and also just saying, you know what, it's fine. But I think all those things, that's like our anxieties about it's never good enough, or it's this thing, or and you do have to just sometimes say it's done, because I think too, the record is the record, but these songs, you play them live and they evolve. You play them a little differently. Maybe you'll extend a part and jam it out, or maybe you'll kind of do something different with the guitar solo, or do a little different vocal kind of melody thing. And you can, like there's a whole book about that Leonard Cohen song, Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah.
And Leonard Cohen notoriously was never satisfied with his lyrics. So he would write a song, and it might even be out, but he'd be on the road, and he would still be
changing it and editing it.
Because he, and that was a personal kind of process for him, but I do think there's this element of, even if something is flawed, you present it in a form, like a recording, and it's like, the artist might listen back and be like, man, I'm so bummed out about the mix. I'm so bummed out about this, and so that's...
I hate myself.
But then you'll see, like, this is like I'm a huge Megadeth fan, and they keep like remixing the records, and I get that you don't like it, but the way we heard it was how we heard it. So we're never going to hear it from your perspective of being unsatisfied. Even though there are sometimes records that just, I think, blatantly sound bad, that were improved, like the Lamb of God As the Palace is Burned remix, which I think is incredible, and I can't go back to listen to the old ones, because it sounds so good now.
It's just interesting the way that it all goes. And one thing on the editing that you sort of touched on before, you think a song is done and somebody changes one thing, but they're not really changing one thing, because by changing the one thing, suddenly everything else is put into a different perspective, and then you might have to go back and fix or redo 35 other parts of the song. That's where people go a little bit crazy, I think.
Well, it's tough for me because I think I'm a bit like OCD with things, is that everything has to have a purpose and a reason, and like you said, it's like creates a cascade effect, or like some dominoes.
Yeah, that's exactly. Cascade is the best word. For it.
And so to me, it's like, listen, you can't. There has to be a reason why this happens, and I get my kind of need for things to be kind of, have symmetry and kind of have a through line that's a thought process that explains, I'm doing this because it sets up this thing. I'm doing this because, or whatever, just in, but that's you don't want to go on that road with me because I'll get you know.
You've already been intense enough the last 10 minutes about it, so I wouldn't want to actually have to do it with you.
No,
you know?
no. Well, I'm just saying, like, I know it definitely gets on people's nerves when I kind of, get really nitpicky about certain things.
I don't think you ever could have been in one of those bands where they were taking 2 years to make records back in the 70s.
No, I've done. I listen with my old band. God forbid, we would really take our time, and I kind of like that. In ways, that's more of my mindset than the let's bang it out in a month.
Bang it out.
Yeah, like because
when you bang it out, then if you rethink something 2 weeks later, you're past the point where you can fix it again. You know?
Yeah. Well, I did a record with this band called Vegas Nerve, and we did it over a long period of time, and every iteration of it got better. By the end of it, just little ways, because I had these like demos, and then we started playing this, jamming the songs, and then you learned kind of like, oh, this actually works way better, the way we do it in the room, and then that changes the way you do. But every band's not like that. So sometimes, and unfortunately, because this is a business and you're working towards certain goals, me wanting to be there like Tool and take 8 years to write a record is not really conducive to like, hey, we have touring cycles and we need to get this out by this date, and those are two different angles. And I think hey, let's do a record every 2 years is probably a lot more productive and more conducive to like a functional business.
One thing I think you've lost, as has everybody else, that takes away from the process of really crafting the song before it becomes time to finish it, is you can't take an unfinished song and play it on the road anymore and sort of work it out and let it find its way, because then somebody's going to be downloading it in Singapore 15 minutes later because somebody shot it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that because it's not like, that might happen, but it's still a camera. It's not the greatest sound. It's still a little distorted. It's still not necessarily the final version. So it's one thing if like a demo leaks and it's like an actual recording quality. But I'm okay with that. I think it's much worse if you're a stand-up comedian and someone records your bit because it's literally not finished.
Yeah.
It's someone didn't read the text. They lie.
It's all right, Axel. We'll see you later. You heard we were talking about him.
But yeah, I think in certain other types of creative work, it's different. But to me, like it's like I would, it's like, hey, Metallica played a new song. Like I remember when they played 2x4 and I was like, we're all trying to find bootlegs.
They've been playing they played that forever before it actually ever.
But that's
came
what I'm
out.
saying. Like that, I remember I had like a live recording of that and like Devil's Dance, and it didn't affect the way I heard the record.
Yeah.
It's just like that's kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool to hear a song or go back and watch like there was like a really old video of Rage Against the Machine. It might be their first or second show. Really old footage of like Pearl Jam, and they basically sound exactly like their albums. Like. Out the gate, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Really good.
I like stuff like that. I like getting to the nitty gritty and nerd out, bootlegs and things like that. I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, listen, to wrap up, looking at the new record, can you give me any sort of time frame for this thing at this point?
All I've been told is fall. So fall somewhere. We're going on tour starting the end of August through the beginning. I'm sorry, the end of July through the beginning of September, and I believe the record's coming out sometime after the tour. So, but I do believe we will be playing some new songs on this tour with Papa Roach.
Awesome.
So come to the shows and then you can bootleg it and then put it on YouTube and
don't do that. Or if you're his management watching, I told him not to do it.
Well, listen, you can't stop the flood. And it's
get a boat and roll.
Well, no, yeah, you have to, man. It's like in this, I think the rock world works a little differently, but you have a rapper, they'll record something at noon, or put it out that day,
night,
and it'll go viral. It's like there's a much less kind of precious idea about what a song is. Yeah. And listen, I think rock is different, and the way our audiences absorb how we put out records is a little different. You saw it with like the Avenged Sevenfold release where they did the surprise release, kind of mimicking what a Beyonce or Kendrick Lamar or something would do. And we saw like, even though that record did well enough, I think we saw kind of how culturally how the different kind of scenes
react to that.
Just absorb. I think it's like I think we're almost more like it's like a blockbuster movie, right? You gotta have the teaser, then the trailer, then okay, I booked my ticket. Like we're more we like the anticipation and buying the I know
Yeah.
I'll get the pre-sale with the record and the T-shirt, and we're a little more invested in kind of that anticipation and build up. It's like when that Tool record comes out, that thing's gonna sell a lot of records because we're all waiting for it. So I think that all that stuff it's interesting. Not that I discredit them for doing that. I appreciate they did that because they're saying like, hey, we're in enough position where we can take risks and try things, and we see ourselves in the world of a Beyonce or Kendrick Lamar, and I think it shows that band is really stands on their own 2 feet.
And they also have a hell of a way of thinking. Listen, it's always good to talk to you.
Likewise.
Through the years with all the different stuff you've done, you're a good man, Doc.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Doc Coyle, Bad Wolves. We are backstage at Rockfest, Cadott, Wisconsin. I'm Lou Brutus. Thanks for hanging with us.